Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're talking about the one and only Kaspa coin. Ladies and gentlemen, right before I dive into the technical analysis and some other stuff, I do want to cover, a comment like this that I saw online, and I've actually seen a couple of those. And we're going to break this down just for roughly a minute or so before we dive into the good stuff. Look, Cast community, what now? 10 BPS meant nothing for the price. Now wait another 6 months for smart contracts and keep begging for free tier 1 listings. Maybe if you want to watch if you watch wallet and are two enough, it magically turns out to be on Binance. The Lulu Kaspa community. Listen, people like this are either one brain dead as shit, right? People are absolutely brain dead. And I wouldn't put it past. Look, I've seen a lot of dumb comments in the whole crypto sphere for the last year or so. I've been in crypto for a while, but I've always been kind of a guy that just kind of stays off social media in general for the most part. But yeah, I mean, seeing these types of comments, sometimes people rage bait, right? There's rage bait comments, which I mean, you have nothing better to do with your life other than rage bait on Twitter. Kind of also an L. But some people are genuinely very, very dumb, right? You got to remember, a lot of the world is actually very, very dumb. And especially when you start talking about things like crypto and finance and stuff, it just starts getting more and more narrowed, right? Being ignorant is one thing, right? Not just having the proper education, whatever. But some people genuinely have a brick for a brain, right? So people like this that think, oh, an update happened, automatic means boom, pumps are going to be happening, billions of market caps are Casper is going to go up in billions of market cap, it's going to jump from 9 cents to whatever the hell he thinks is going to happen. Right? It is just it's not worth usually, bringing up these types of comments. Every time I ever see these types of comments, I actually kind of laugh because it does make me feel better about myself, truly. And it makes me feel better for you guys too. The ones that are smart, the ones that are listening, the ones that are trying to understand, the ones that do have more optimism than pessimism, especially when, the data suggests green, green, green over the next few months, right? So, right, we can see don't listen to these types of people, don't listen to types of people, especially if they have this type of shit in their bio. People like that are never usually mentally stable. But look, right, enough roasting these types of people. Let's dive into the technical analysis, because yes, we did have 10 bps recently, right? If you guys don't know, Caspa practically pack a punch and became 10 times the coin it is today. It went from 1 BPS all the way to 10, and in the future, we will be going to 100. So it is a scaling coin, right? If you had bought this coin before May 5th, and, anytime before May 5th, even if you didn't even sell this cycle, the probability of this coin being a top coin and staying as a top coin over the coming years and becoming more and more relevant in the whole crypto sphere is very, very likely, especially that it is going to be scaling. Now, look, if we go to something like Caspa and we look at the market cap and we look at the other stuff, we can see 2.5 billion market cap, 65 million in volume, right? We are kind of consolidating right now. We can see we're not listed on Binance or some other big exchanges, which is fine, ladies and gentlemen, because those listings will either be inevitable or, we will just perform without them, right? Because the reality is, if there's a good project, if there's money to be made, institutions, companies, they will be buying up this token. They will be, pumping this token. That is just the reality. We can see the reason why the price action has slowed down a decent amount in recent times is because we have had a big recovery from, let's just say, 5 cents. We went all the way up to 11. But if we look, we can see that actually this big range is a huge support and resistance. Resistance now, support in the future. So we can see once we start entering roughly, a little bit above 10 cents, that is when momentum really starts dying down, especially up to 11.5 cents, right? Lots of structure over here. We see on the weekly, even in previous price actions before, right? Boom, boom, and boom, right? Multiple times. Caspa has had weeks of price action here where it held. Yes, it broke down below, right? We got a liquidity sweep imbalance correction, and we also went on top of this last previous high before the big pump. So big, nice fundamental retest popping in. We can see in recent times we recovered, we tapped into this price action, we sold off a little bit, but we held between this nice relevant zone. And now I expect Kaspa to continue to try to push up, right? We can see that we have actually on the lower scale have consolidated for roughly 4 days straight. And I expect Kaspa to continue going up higher and higher, especially that Bitcoin, right? If we can see something like Bitcoin is going all the way up to 100K. We are at $100,000 Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that things, right? Bitcoin was like what? Peaked at 107, 108K. We're almost back at all-time highs for Bitcoin, right? Sure, Kaspa is not in its prime, price where Bitcoin was super high as well. But you got to remember the Bitcoin dominance has been going up roughly, right? 6.74%. Sure, it's taking a decent dip today of 0.5%. But overall, ladies and gentlemen, right? The thing is, this is, just a temporary pullback because I do expect Bitcoin dominance to go upwards of 70, 71%. So yeah, look, right? That means altcoins, they will see green, but they won't be getting super pumped. But I do expect over the next couple of weeks, few short months, for Kaspa to truly recover. Once we break above this 10, 11 cent mark and we start holding, honestly, the path to recovering is pretty quick, right? We'll go from 11 cents, we'll go upwards of 16 cents, sell off a little bit, consolidate probably back to 14. And the next wave we're going to make is going upwards of 20 cents. Look, that is just how I see it, right? This is the big last relevant zone. Once we hold 10 to 11 cents, I mean, literally, right? If we go look on the monthly candles, right? The next type, like I said, relevant structure is around 16 cents. Then we'll probably get, like I say, a little bit of pullback fundamental. Then we're going to be aiming for the all-time highs. And, there's a high chance that we will actually start breaking out of the all-time highs. I don't believe Kaspa will be ranging for a year like the way it was, right? Very, very unique price action. Obviously, not great in terms of trying to make gains because some cryptos did absolutely wonders in 2024 while Kaspa kind of just, more or less stayed in the same range at the end of the day. But you know what? This type of price action is actually very good when it comes to looking for expansions and for price to be pumping, right? We get solid support off this zone. Then once we come on top here, right, we can see the solid support roughly from the 18 to 19 cents. And then we will just start mooning. But that is the ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.